Rome was not built to collapse, it was built to last forever. At least that is what its people believed. For centuries, Rome stood at the center of the known world. Its legions marched across continents. Its roads stretched for thousands of miles. Its engineers built structures that still stand today. Its laws shaped entire civilizations. Its name became synonymous with power. At its peak, Rome ruled more than 60 million people, nearly a quarter of the world's population at the time. It controlled Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It dominated trade routes. It commanded the strongest army on earth. To its enemies, Rome looked unstoppable. To its citizens, it looked eternal. For a long time, it truly seemed that way. So how does something that powerful disappear? How does an empire that dominates the world slowly fade into history? Was it invasion? Was it economic collapse? Was it political corruption? Or was it something more complex? The truth is uncomfortable. Rome did not fall in a single moment. It did not collapse because of one enemy. It decayed. Slowly, quietly, from within. The Roman Empire grew too large. Expansion had always been its strength. Conquest brought wealth and glory. Conquest brought slaves, land, and tribute. But expansion also created pressure, or borders stretched thousands of miles. Defending them required enormous resources. Communication was slow. Orders from Rome could take weeks to arrive. Local governors gained more autonomy. Control became harder to maintain. Political instability increased. Emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. Some ruled wisely, many ruled briefly. Assassinations became common. Power struggles turned deadly. The army gained political influence. Soldiers often decided who would become emperor. Generals marched on Rome itself. Civil wars erupted repeatedly. Roman fought Roman. Each conflict drained manpower and money. The economy began to weaken. Maintaining the military was expensive. Public works required funding. Taxes increased. Citizens felt the burden. To cover rising expenses, the government reduced the silver content in coins. Currency lost value. Inflation spiraled. Prices rose rapidly. Trade slowed. Confidence declined. Small farmers struggled under heavy taxation. Many lost their land. Large estates dominated agriculture. Economic inequality widened. The middle class weakened. Rome also relied heavily on slave labor. While efficient at first, it discouraged innovation. Technological progress slowed. Productivity stagnated. Corruption spread through administration. Officials demanded bribes. Political positions were purchased. Merit mattered less than loyalty. Public trust eroded. Civic pride declined. Serving the empire no longer inspired the same devotion. Identity began to shift from imperial to local. Meanwhile, pressure along the borders intensified. Germanic tribes migrated southward. Some sought refuge from other groups. Some sought better opportunities. Others sought conquest. Rome tried diplomacy. Rome tried military force. Rome tried compromise. Sometimes it paid tribes to maintain peace. Sometimes it allowed them to settle within imperial territory. These solutions worked temporarily, but they created long-term vulnerabilities. The empire eventually divided administratively. The eastern half centered on Constantinople. The western half remained based in Rome and later Ravenna. The east was wealthier and more stable. The west struggled financially and militarily. Leadership in the Western Empire weakened further. Strong emperors became rare. Short reigns continued. Instability became normal. In 410, the city of Rome was sacked by the Visigoths. For centuries, Rome had been untouchable. Now it was vulnerable. The psychological shock was immense. Although the empire survived this event, its image of invincibility was shattered. Territories gradually slipped away. Britain was abandoned. Gaul destabilized. Spain fragmented. North Africa was lost to the Vandals. With North Africa went vital grain supplies. Revenue declined sharply. The army shrank. Defense weakened. Local leaders gained more authority. Central power faded. By 476, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. There was no grand final battle, no dramatic explosion, just a quiet end to centuries of dominance. The Western Roman Empire ceased to exist, But Rome's fall was not caused by one single factor. It was the result of accumulated strain, political instability, economic crisis, military overextension, social transformation, external pressure. Each problem alone could have been managed. Together, they became overwhelming. Rome tried reforms. Some emperors reorganized the army. Others restructured taxation. Administrative systems were adjusted. Temporary stability returned at times, but the underlying weaknesses remained. Momentum had been lost. Empires depend on momentum. They depend on confidence. They depend on unity. When citizens lose faith in institutions, when leaders prioritize power over stability, decline accelerates. Rome teaches us that collapse is rarely dramatic. It is usually gradual. It is often invisible at first. It becomes obvious only in hindsight. The empire did not crumble in a day. It eroded over generations. People adapted to dysfunction. They normalized instability. They accepted corruption as routine. By the time the final emperor fell, Rome was already exhausted, financially strained, militarily stretched, politically fragmented. Its fall reshaped Europe. It marked the beginning of a new era, but its legacy endured. Roman law influenced future governments. Latin shaped modern languages. Roman engineering inspired centuries of builders. Rome did not vanish completely. It transformed the world in new ways, and perhaps that is the final lesson. No empire is immune to decline. No power is permanent. Strength must be maintained. Reform must be timely. Unity must be protected. Otherwise, even the greatest empire can fade. By the 5th century, Rome was no longer expanding. It was surviving. And survival mode changes everything. An expanding empire thinks about the future. A declining empire thinks about the next crisis. Rome stopped building momentum. It started reacting. Each invasion was handled separately. Each political crisis was treated as temporary. Each economic reform was designed as a short-term fix. But decline does not care about short-term solutions. The army, once the pride of Rome, began to change. Recruitment became harder. Fewer citizens volunteered. Serving no longer felt like honor. It felt like risk. So Rome hired mercenaries. Foreign warriors filled the ranks. They fought bravely, but their loyalty was tied to payment, not identity. When payment stopped, loyalty shifted. At the same time, emperors became figureheads. Real power moved behind the curtain. Military commanders controlled politics. Court intrigue replaced strong leadership. Confidence disappeared from the top down. The Western Empire struggled financially. It depended heavily on tax from provinces that were now unstable. When North Africa fell, grain shipments declined. Revenue collapsed further. Food shortages created tension. Urban populations suffered. Trade routes became dangerous. Rome was no longer the center of the world. It was one power among many. And then came 476. A Germanic commander named Odoacer removed the young Emperor Romulus Augustulus from power. There was no epic siege. No final stand of thousands, no cinematic ending, just a quiet transfer of authority. The imperial insignia was sent to Constantinople. The message was clear. The West no longer needed an emperor. And just like that, nearly 5 centuries of Western Roman rule ended. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Rome did not collapse because barbarians were stronger. It collapsed because it was weaker inside. External pressure only exposes internal weakness. Rome had grown too complex, too divided, too dependent on constant expansion. When expansion stopped, the machine slowed. When the machine slowed, cracks appeared. When cracks appeared, trust weakened. When trust weakened, unity fractured. Empires run on confidence. When confidence dies, collapse accelerates. Rome's citizens adapted to instability. They expected corruption. They expected inflation. They expected short reigns. They stopped believing in permanence. And belief is everything. A system survives as long as people believe in it. Once belief fades, institutions become hollow. Rome teaches a lesson that feels surprisingly modern. No empire falls only because of enemies. It falls when internal strength cannot match external pressure. Political division matters. Economic inequality matters. Military overextension matters. Leadership quality matters. Civic trust matters. Remove enough of these pillars, and even the strongest structure collapses. The fall of Rome was not a dramatic explosion. It was a long erosion, a slow fading, a gradual loss of energy. And maybe that is why it fascinates us, because it feels human. Rome was not destroyed in one mistake. It declined through accumulation, small decisions, short-term thinking, delayed reforms, ignored warning signs. By the time leaders understood the depth of the crisis, the system was too fragile to recover. Yet Rome did not vanish completely. Its eastern half continued for another 1,000 years. Its laws influenced Europe. Its culture shaped religion. Its language shaped communication. Rome transformed rather than disappeared. But the Western Empire became history. And history leaves questions. Could Rome have saved itself? Could stronger leadership have changed the outcome? Could economic reform have stabilized the system? Perhaps. Perhaps not. What is certain is this: power is never permanent, dominance is never guaranteed. Strength must be maintained constantly. When growth hides weakness, decline begins. When corruption becomes normal, decay accelerates. When leaders fight each other instead of solving problems, collapse approaches. Rome's story is not just ancient history, it is a warning written in stone. Every civilization believes it is different. Every superpower believes it is secure. Every dominant system believes it is stable. Rome believed that too, and yet it fell. Not in fire, not in thunder, but in silence. And that silence echoes through history, because the real reason Rome fell was not one invasion, not one emperor, not one crisis. It was the slow acceptance of decline. And that may be the most dangerous enemy of all.